Welcome to another edition of Around the Table with Stacy Smith as we take a look at the political scene. First, it was Hillary Clinton, and then former President Trump, then President Biden, and the latest high-ranking official to have classified documents either in a computer or stuffed away somewhere in his home is former Vice President Mike Pence. Even though both parties are involved in this sort of escapade, it hasn't stopped the finger pointing or the criticism. And that's part of what we will discuss today as we go around the table. And I'd like to introduce you to my astute panel of political experts and veterans, and they are former governor of Pennsylvania, Tom Corbett. He's a Republican. He also served as state attorney general and also as the U.S. attorney for the Western District of Pennsylvania. Mr. Corbett now teaches law at Duquesne University. Jim Byrne, who is a former chairman of the Democratic Party in Pennsylvania, is now chairman emeritus of that party. He also served as president of Allegheny County Council and also as mayor of Millvale for many years. Jim is an attorney in town. As we go around the table, we find Keith Schmidt. Keith's background in politics goes back to the Reagan presidency, and Keith was the state director for former Republican Senator Rick Santorum. Keith was also a consultant to Santorum's 2012 presidential campaign. Keith has his own consulting firm. And finally, seated at the table is a name that is familiar to a lot of politicians in Pittsburgh and in Pennsylvania. That would be Joe Mystic. Joe is a guiding light for a lot of Democrats. He's consulted on campaigns across the state. He also served in several roles in city government, including that as deputy mayor. Joe teaches law at Duquesne University, and you can read his thoughts on life and politics in the Trib every weekend. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us once again for Around the Table. So let's just go ahead and jump in with this one. Governor, with President Biden and former Vice President Pence confirming they also had classified documents in their homes, does this now remove this as campaign fodder against Donald Trump in 2024?
Well, it certainly lowers it. I think there's a lot of other material that people from both sides of the aisle running against Mr. Trump would be able to use that is much more important to the discussion as to the qualification. The issue of material like that in somebody's home, while it is not a good idea, I'm sure it's been happening for decades that people took stuff home with them by accident. One footnote, when I left office, my 4 years as governor, all my records were electronic. I was the first governor to have computer access right at my desk. Everything was put on a disk and went to the archives. So I don't have anything in my office.
Interesting. Joe, what are your thoughts? Or Jim, anybody, jump in.
You look at the intent. Look at the individuals that you've just referenced. Secretary Clinton, Vice President Pence, President Biden, Donald Trump. Hillary Clinton, Vice President Pence, and President Biden have a common thread through the facts of their situation. There's no evidence of any intent to conceal, any intent to obstruct, any intent to have knowingly or willingly or unlawfully taken these documents in violation of federal law. Now, you compare the facts of those three individuals to the facts of the former President Donald Trump, who had these documents in his possession, was made aware by the appropriate authorities and entities that he had them, was advised to return them, and then for almost a year, through roadblocks, obstructed, and lacked any cooperation whatsoever of any significance with the authorities or the government to retrieve those documents. It took a subpoena and a search warrant to get in there and retrieve them. That is the biggest difference between what Mr. Trump did, based on the facts as we know them, and the other three individuals. And that is a significant difference. And there will be repercussions, in my opinion, for Mr. Trump in the months ahead.
Jim, let's not be too harsh. I wouldn't want anything to happen to former President Trump that would keep him from being the Republican candidate in the upcoming presidential race. The fact is, though, that Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan said decades ago, we have too many classified documents. There's something wrong with this system. I think it's the nature of bureaucrats to mark things classified just to cover their own steps in the bureaucracy, and we should look at that, and we also should look at an officer who's in charge of monitoring this stuff for chief executives. I had offered to spend the weekend out at Governor Corbett's house, going through his garage just to see if there was anything there.
Be my guest. You can help me clean it up.
Well, I think when they named the special prosecutor with the president's classified documents, I think there was probably a lot of celebration among some Republicans saying, "Oh, look at this" and everything else. I agree, even with my Democratic counterparts. Although the optics are the same, they're very different cases, but optics matter in the press cycle and how people manage the information they're given by the media. But I have a kind of a different take on it, and maybe I think it's almost one that Joe has shown that he shares with me, that in the end, this might be a net benefit to Democrats because it does breathe new life into Donald Trump when many of us Republicans would like to see that chapter end cleanly long before the presidential sweepstakes start in January of next year. And a special prosecutor also might have the president reconsider his decision or what he might do in his own future. He's the president of the United States. If he wants to run for re-election, he's going to be nominated. But there's a lot of people that think a new Democrat would be in a stronger position to hold the White House if they went in a different direction. And this chapter in American politics might actually push that decision in a different direction for the sitting president.
Stacy, let me add this one interesting comment, I think. It was surprising and shocking to me that after the raid at Mar-a-Lago by the FBI, that everybody who has sensitive documents at their house or has documents at their house didn't say, we better go through and see what we have right now. And if you have them, turn them over. That's number one. Number two, I think the president's mistake in this one and his staff was not telling the media immediately after they turned it over to the archives and letting it go for 2 months. And it looks like a cover-up. It's not. I don't think it's that big of a deal. But he led with his chin on that one, and they're all punching back.
I'm going
I think that's accurate. I agree with the governor on that.
Okay, I'm going to, as a journalist, throw this one out just as an observer that we do as television and print, and that is with the President Biden's documents, some were at his garage, some were inside his library or study, whatever he happens to have in his home, but others were found in the Penn Biden Center. Now, how would those have ended up there? Others in his, I think all of us can see how, you're packing up things, putting in a box, and they're carried out and they end up in your garage somehow, and you haven't looked at them for years. But how do some of them end up in the Penn Biden Center where he, set up this office after he left the vice presidency? So
yeah, I'm less alarmed by that than the garage. To be honest with you, this is a think tank of sorts. It's the very place where you might want documents, so you can review them, writing your memoirs for the sake of it, for the opportunity to advise other presidents or heads of state should they call.
But then that you're the attorney, and I hate to try to counter you on this one, but wouldn't that then indicate?
I'm just one of the attorneys here.
Okay, well, that's true. Wouldn't that indicate then that he knowingly took those documents to the Penn Biden Center?
I think the misnomer or the misunderstanding here is, other than Donald Trump, I don't think that Mike Pence or Joe Biden were sitting around packing boxes and carrying them out to the car. They weren't doing it. This is bad staff work at the end of the day. If somebody said to the staff, pack up my stuff, but make sure you don't take any classified materials, and they drop the ball, that's the way this happens.
I've listened to all my 3 colleagues in previous programs, all attorneys, tell me that the quickest way to end the Trump presidency is these documents. And I didn't disagree with you. You're lawyers. I believe that the law probably stands with you. But now that opportunity might have eroded. It might be too much public backlash and outrage, and you're going to deal with a lot of problems now that the optics are so all over the board now. I mean, I think you lost that window now.
Ethan,
now there are other things that they're pursuing them on, clearly, but this whole sense of, we can end this quickly and move on for the American people, I think that ship has sailed.
Well, unless there is evidence that the Trump organization used some of these documents or some of this information for business purposes, which I think is part of this investigation to make sure that has not happened, then this is a non-issue. I agree.
All right.
Should he have responded to the subpoena? Yes. Should he have not required a subpoena? Yes. but it's still a non-issue. And, once again, I want to see him at the top of your ticket.
All right, we have to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.